Hey everybody, welcome back to our channel. Today's video is going to be very important to you because we're going to be elaborating on the 7 key benefits to utilizing debt weapons. You don't want to miss this one. All right guys, Matthew Pillmore here. I'm the president of VIP Financial Education, where we help you go further, faster financially, and we do it through online trainings like this one, as well as in-person live classes all over the country. In fact, I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, enjoying this lovely hotel room, about to head out and teach a large audience of real estate investors this evening. But before I went out and hit the stage, I really wanted to share with you the 7 key benefits to debt weapons. Guys, these are questions we get all the time, and while we talk about them in most of our trainings, it's important that we go into a little bit more detail so that you can really understand why it is that we're even accessing these on a perpetual basis in the first place. The very first and most important reason that we're going out and getting access to debt weapons is to increase our cash flow. It's been concluded after thousands of conversations that I've had with people one-on-one that there is no more important number to us financially than how much money we have left over at the end of each month. Now, some people call that disposable income or discretionary income. We call that cash flow here at VIP. And cash flow gives us freedom of choice. When we have more money left over at the end of each month, we have more options. It's all about having options, guys. It's not good enough to just simply earn more money than you spend. When you earn money, it's often transactional. You can't simply go to a day job or work hard in your business every day and expect that to be the desired long-term plan. Ultimately, we have to begin diversifying our income streams into things that are even more passive and, of course, residual. And over time, that should ultimately end up replacing what we're earning at our day jobs. Now, I'm not suggesting that, your retirement is going to look any different than mine. My retirement will always include what many people might define as work. I am a serial entrepreneur. I can't even imagine sitting around doing nothing every day for the rest of my life, no matter how old I am. While I still want to continue to put in effort and creative growth, I don't want to have to do it for money. The money needs to take care of itself. So I want my money working for me, earning new income, and I want to do whatever I want to do with my time. And I'm guessing you're the same way. So cash flow is the #1 benefit of debt weapons. Let's mathematically give a very simple example. If I were to have a $10,000 debt that costs $200 each month as a minimum payment, whereby I could then transfer that debt from where it is to a new debt weapon account that has a $100 net minimum payment obligation, I've now increased my cash flow by $100. You kind of get the gist. Now, another example would be I take that same $10,000 debt weapon, and what if I could invest that $10,000 into a new asset that produces for me another $100 net at the end of each month in disposable income or cash flow? Now all of a sudden we're growing our cash flow through the investing side. Cash flow is grown in only 2 ways: making more money and spending less money. So we're going to be doing both with the use of these debt weapon vehicles. The second main benefit of debt weapons is the ability to take amortization schedules and compress them. I've asked a lot of people, how long, if the banks get what they want, will we stay in debt? And inevitably, everybody always gives me the exact same answer, and I'm assuming you would too. So we know the banks want us to stay in debt for as long as possible. What if we could take 30-year loans, like your mortgage, for instance, and compress that down to 5 or 10 years? By shaving 2/3 or even 3/4 of the timeline from your existing amortization schedules off, you can essentially put almost the same in future interest costs back into your pocket, 2/3 to 3/4 of your future interest costs. On a $200,000 loan, that could easily amount to $150,000. When you get access to money that otherwise would have gone to the banks, you have more choices, options, and ultimately freedom. The third benefit is being able to create better bank accounts. It's widely accepted and known by all of us that the banks are in business to profit and create rules that benefit themselves. And not one person that I've ever been in contact with has expressed satisfaction or content about the monetary value of their checking and savings accounts. It's pathetic. Most people simply rely on these accounts because of three basic benefits. The accounts are generally liquid, they're usually safe, and they're mostly convenient. So liquidity, safety, and convenience are generally fairly good reasons for us to rely on accounts that not one person is content with financially. But most of us are unaware that there are alternatives where we can still get those three benefits, and debt weapons are just that. What if I could open a debt weapon where I have now $25,000 that I didn't have access to before, and let's say it's completely convenient and it's available anytime I need it, so it's totally liquid, and it's safe, meaning that the money is same as cash. It's available anytime, and the likelihood of that account being open and active is very high anytime I want it. And let's say I had $10,000 sitting idly in a checking or a savings account. Would I not be able to use that $10,000 to eliminate, say, an existing balance that's costing me maybe $200 or $300 every single month? Like an auto loan or a credit card? If you're not earning $200 or $300 a month from the money sitting idly in your checking account now, then that would be a much better opportunity for you to get that money working. And you still then have access to not just $10,000, but another 250% of the original amount you had before in the form of a $25,000 liquid debt weapon. This is an example of how we can replace inadequate checking and savings accounts by accessing these various tools. The fourth benefit of debt weapons is that you're able to invest more quickly and safely than you otherwise would be able to. Again, let's say you had that same $10,000 sitting in the bank and we open a $25,000 unsecured capital account. If you were to take that $10,000 and say invest it with a partner in a real estate transaction or put it toward another income producing asset, maybe you take it and invest it into your small business and grow your cash flow that way. If you had done that without first having access to the debt weapon, you would put yourself into a much more dangerous position simply because you wouldn't have access to the reserves any longer if something unexpected happened where you needed the money. But in this case, if we open this debt weapon first, and now you have, again, 250% of what you had before, that $10,000 can go to work for you, and you know that that money is still available to you if the emergency takes place, but now you've got $10,000 that's been safely invested into an increase of your cash flow. So it gives you not only access to a safer way of investing, but more money to invest with that you just simply didn't have before. This is an elaboration of the Robert Kiyosaki philosophy of other people's money. If you're unfamiliar with Robert, he wrote the series Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a cult classic. I mean, an absolute smash hit with the audiences that I speak with. Very rarely is there an audience where at least 50% of the room hasn't read that book and subsequent books that came after it by Robert and his wife Kim. Robert talks about borrowing other people's money in order to create income producing assets and buy income streams. But one thing that is rarely discussed is then how that money is used as well in order to rapidly eliminate the balances that come with that leverage. Leverage is one of the single greatest ingredients to wealth creation. And if you don't believe in that, you need to do your research. The downside to leverage is the inherent risk that comes with the debt, because leverage is debt. It turns into debt once you borrow it. By advancing the Robert Kiyosaki philosophies into this concept where we're able to then take the balances and turn our attention back into advancing that net worth by paying off the liabilities that come with it, as opposed to this kind of perpetual growth of both the assets and the liabilities, we can put ourselves in the safest position possible, whereby our cash flow is even larger exponentially because we're optimizing the liability elimination side as well as the asset growth side at the exact same time. So very, very cool concept. The fifth main reason that we are benefiting and accessing these debt weapons, benefiting from and using them, is in order to minimize the total cost of interest. So when we talk about advancing the philosophies of OPM, other people's money, we're essentially saying, why spend tens of thousands and in more cases, hundreds of thousands in unnecessary interest costs and banking costs when there are techniques that allow us to put that money back in our own pockets. And when you keep the future interest costs that you would have otherwise spent on your existing and future mortgages and your existing and future non-mortgage related balances, then it again creates opportunity, options, choices. All of those words are synonyms for freedom. All we want, all you want, is freedom of choice. So we're using these debt weapons to not just compress the amortization schedules and minimize the compound interest that's being charged against us. We're just simply keeping that money for ourselves and then turning around and creating more wealth with it. So the logic behind that concept makes sense to most people. Hopefully it's something that's starting to take root inside you as well. Sixth is the enhancement of your both personal and business credit profile, which includes your scores. When we're using these both personal and business collection of debt weapons correctly, were considered fairly aggressive by the banking institutions. Now, in reality, we're actually much more conservative because the approach we're taking leads to a much stronger financial position overall. We're not doing anything as far as enhancing risks. The risks are actually significantly minimized. But from a utilization standpoint, the banks see a lot of activity and therefore we're considered more favorable borrowers. When we go into our banking institutions, they look at us in a different way and our underwriting generally ends up being much easier. You'll see that by checking out a couple of our other videos under our debt weapons playlist, where I just simply walked into banks and have recently received access to tens of thousands of dollars in just a couple of days without showing much of anything as far as income and assets. It's based mostly on my general credit worthiness. So I love that about utilizing debt weapons the right way. One of the main benefits is I can get access to a lot more of them because I'm a very strong borrower. The final and seventh category, which has been touched on a couple of times throughout this conversation, is enhancement of safety. So again, we're not dealing with a process that's putting us in danger. Let me give you another example. If you have $10,000 now and you just simply continue doing with it what you have been, whether it be sitting idly, whether it's being put to work, either way, your maximum availability is this $10,000. And if we go out and we access debt weapons, say $25,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 or more, remember, we're getting $25,000 every year. Our goal is to extend our collection by at least that $25,000 minimum every year. And that number can be as high as $250,000 in a year. If you're at another $50,000 that you didn't have access to before, aren't you safer? What if something happens? What if you're running your own small business and suddenly you have a couple bad months in a row? Or what if you happen to be walking down the stairs, you step off wrong, you break your ankle, and your medical insurance has lapsed, or you have a copay that you need to cover, or there are extenuating expenses that happen as a result of that. Say you can't go to work for a couple of weeks. Any set of financial costs that you weren't planning on that exceed that $10,000 that you had available, now all of a sudden you're in trouble. But if you have access to debt weapons, realizing, of course, that we don't want to rely on these for emergency purposes if we don't have to, but what's the alternative? If you don't have money and you need it, then you ultimately can be in trouble, big trouble. So what we need to do is progressively work our way towards having access to as much money as possible. There is no such thing as having access to too much money. It doesn't exist. So by extending our collections and inventory of these capital accounts, not only are we in the best cash flowing position possible with the most amount of assets and the least amount of liabilities with the lowest amount of banking costs associated with it, but we're also in the absolute safest financial position that we can be in. There are 4 key questions that have to be answered correctly before you can apply for your next debt weapon. The first question that we always ask is, what is the intended purpose? What is our next priority financially? What are our goals financially, which this debt weapon would serve a purpose in advancing? Once we know the purpose of that debt weapon, we can then ask the question, which one do we get and who's currently providing it? Those 2 questions are the second and third of this 4-question series, which obviously need to be answered in order to identify the next debt weapon that's going to be added to the collection. And it's a lot like automobile shopping. If I know the purpose of the automobile, if I want to be an Uber driver, I'm obviously going to be looking at getting a different type of vehicle than if I want to be a construction worker, or if I want to just have an off-road vehicle, or if I'm looking for something that has great fuel efficiency, that might be a different vehicle than if I'm looking for something that I want to use at the lake every weekend to sail with, or as a motorboat. I obviously need to identify the purpose to make sure I'm on the right dealership lot. If I'm looking for a motorboat, I probably shouldn't be hunting around the Honda dealership. And debt weapons work the same way. The fourth and final question that we answer is, when should we apply? Keep in mind that every time we apply for a new debt weapon, almost all of them are going to have a negative impact to our credit rating temporarily. So our credit profile, being that that's our top priority at all times, will minimize the frequency with which we're out getting debt weapons. It might seem like we can go out and just apply for 20 of these things each week, when in fact, by doing so, we're putting ourselves in danger. So these 4 questions are questions that we help our members answer. If you have not yet taken advantage of it, the next best step is to get on the coaching schedule for your 1 complimentary implementation coaching session. This is a courtesy from us to you. And you can pick a date and time that'll work well for you and your significant other if you have one. If you do share your finances with anybody, it's critical that you schedule that coaching session with the person you share your finances with. And remember, in order for us to be beneficial to you, you've got to start off with at least $500 in net positive cash flow. So if you don't yet have an average of at least $500 in disposable income each month, then our services are just not yet going to benefit you, and that free coaching session should be postponed to a time when you have that cash flow position ready. Other than that, guys, I really appreciate you tuning into our channel as always. If you like what you hear and you want more information, make sure you subscribe to the channel and select the bell so that you're notified anytime we upload new content. We've got some really cool stuff coming down the pike, and it's really exciting. If you have not yet reserved your affiliate partnership from VIP, make sure you do that as well, because there are some exciting changes that are coming with that, which can get you paid a significant sum of money by just simply sharing free education like this, building your own YouTube channel like this. Being involved and staying plugged in is going to be very important to your overall financial well-being. So again, I just want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.